What's good? Hope you guys are doing well. My name is Raymond. This is the Course Café. We're a week away from the US Open. Today I got to sit down with someone I would call a friend, Mr. Neil Tan. He's the founder of Public Drip. I'm so proud and pumped to see how far he's been able to take the brand, especially in these two last seasons. His latest spring-summer collection is easily his best work to date. The Anywhere pleated pant, which I talked about in social, I've written articles about, has become a staple pant in my rotation these last couple of weeks since it's launched. Neil is just a super talented dude. He cares deeply about his project that he's building, and this dude has a full-time job. He's got a family, and he's still finding time to push the Public Drip brand forward. But we get into all that, his process, how New York shapes the brand, the grind of sampling, staying true to the vision, and what it means to design for community and not just for consumption. It's another great episode. If you've been vibing with these, something that would be incredibly helpful is jump on YouTube and subscribe or follow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, leave a review. I am finding out how much that actually helps. I selfishly want to keep these conversations going and make sure that these are available for everybody. So let's get into it. So what have you been up to the last couple of weeks since we talked last?
Just been kind of taking in all the information and around the last collection, spring summer 25 launch, and kind of just as a business owner, you're looking at the things and seeing how things perform, how we could do better, what do we need to reorder more of, what silhouettes are hitting, which ones are not, and just kind of strategizing really on that front. So just been doing that, and then been prepping for, I think, a big moment for us in the brand for next week. Just been kind of getting all my ducks in a row for a special collaboration next week with some professional players.
Love that. I was doom scrolling last night, just like your personal IG handle and then the Public Drips handle. It's kind of crazy. Like the first time you posted about the brand was 2 days before my birthday, which is mad random.
Oh, no way.
Kind of cool. But yeah, and I think the first time that it popped up on my radar, it was a product shot of the visors. There was 3 sets of visors. It was a green visor and then 2 visors with the gold Public script, the bubble font. I think it stuck out to me because the black and gold was my high school colors. And I think just in general, especially at that time, that was 2020, there wasn't a lot of color in the space in general. And since 2020, it's been 5 years now. The brand's been around for 5 years. Where were you at mentally, creatively, and I guess personally when the brand first started to come to evolution?
Yeah, I can kind of give you a little bit of a story around that and kind of how the brand came about and the inspiration behind everything and kind of the roadmap of where we're at now. I was in a 400 by 400 square foot Manhattan apartment near Central Park, and it was during COVID, and I was trying to find something to do, and I was like, I can't be stuck in this this apartment. I got to get back into something and get outside, right? And one of the safest things was, a lot of people did, was go out and maybe pick up their clubs again, right? So I picked up my clubs again, or bought some clubs, and was like, okay, I'm going to get back into golf, and started playing, and ended up playing. My first time playing, getting back was at Van Cortlandt, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then I looked into the history of this place and started falling in love with the history of where I was playing. And then also, it was my first time ever playing in New York. I didn't know there was golf courses in New York City. I'm originally from California, and coming on as a one-some and then just meeting the coolest people. And that was something that really inspired me, was connecting in these spaces. And so I've always loved New York City for its welcoming of people, but also the public spaces, the green spaces here, where you can connect with people. If you like basketball, go to the West 4th Street courts and you can play some pickup basketball. Or you go to the tennis courts, you could do that. Same thing on the golf course now. So that's where the public part came in for Public Drip. And the drip part was feeling good about yourself, no matter what you want to wear, right? There's no barriers of entry, and you should be able to express yourself, whether that be a polo, whether that be a shirt, a long sleeve shirt, whatever you want to wear, right? It's just really purely being yourself and feeling comfortable in your shoes. And I think traditionally in the game of golf, there's almost a uniform, and you kind of had to wear that uniform in order to fit in. And I think it's changed so much, and that's something that got me really, really excited about uh, the game. And to rewind back to my 16-year-old self, uh, where I was a skateboarder who loved graphic design, I came up with this this clothing company when I was like 16 called Sabotage Clothing. It was
I
just a
think we
fun.
all came up with a clothing brand back in the day.
Yeah. And it was, I took whatever money I had from my summer job and I was like, okay, I'm going to pour all of my money into making some shirts and some stickers. And I would literally sell these shirts for $20 out of the back of my trunk at the skate park or at punk shows that my friends were playing at. And just did that for a little bit and then kind of hung it up because other things came into life. And then, fast forward to, 2020, I was like, oh, wait, I want to pick something back up that I can do creatively where I can flex my photography muscle, like my graphic design muscle, and then building a brand. And I've always loved building brands and telling stories and understanding how to build that community. And that's kind of where I started out in 2020 was creating almost like a mood board, but also what the ethos of kind of start to shape it, and it was almost like a design exercise for myself to like, what does golf look like to me? What does public drift look like to me? And it was almost like this visual mood board practicing photography. And then started, I mean, what you talked about with those visors is seeing like, oh, wow, this is kind of the entry point of making my own stuff, kind of picking back up those sabotage days, right? Like, how do you create
Mm-hmm.
something and put it out into the world, and then see how people react to it? Yeah,
When you were slinging t-shirts at 16, was that in California?
yeah, that was in
When
California.
did you when did you move to New York?
I moved into New York in 2012, and then
Okay.
shortly after, I lived in Brooklyn for 3 years, and then moved to Chicago for 3 years, which was awesome.
Mm.
And then my wife and I weren't done with New York City yet, so we came back and lived in Manhattan for a bit, and that's where now we're here. We're here ever since came back in 2018, so we've been here since
Okay.
2018. Yeah.
So in that mood board exercise, where do you think some of that influence was coming from? More East Coast or some of your roots going back to the West Coast? Because the coastal is very different vibes.
Yeah, I would say more East Coast. I think at that point, my maturity on the seeing things and realizing it, and going out into the streets of New York, walking the streets of New York. I think when you walk in the streets of New York, you just automatically get inspired because there's just so many, especially for me, like I grew up in a small town in California, and coming into a big city and seeing everyone's owning their looks, everyone walks a little different. Um, People dress definitely different and own their style, um, just effortlessly, right? It's everything works for them, and it
Mm-hmm.
might not work in California. There might be a uniform, and I'm sure there's uniforms everywhere, like things that people uh, wear in different locations. But yeah, New York City, I really get inspired by New York City, and then also just how people put things together. From a even high to low, right? They could be wearing a really nice jacket, but also wear a pair of like lowbrow jeans, right, that are wider,
Mm-hmm.
and with a pair of sneakers, and that works, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that, I think a lot of that inspiration comes from there, and then the city itself. It's just a very special city.
That's what I was going to say. I feel like the volume of individuals that are packed so crammed tight, like you could be sitting next to somebody in Wall Street, you could be sitting to an independent artist that is creating out like original content and stuff. So like the spectrum of personalities that you see that in clothing throughout like the streets of New York, which is
Well,
wild.
well, especially like when you ride the subway, right? The subway to me is the equalizer of class, right? You'll literally have billionaires on there, maybe not billionaires, but people who work on Wall Street, who are there, who are dressed a certain way. Then you have the artist, right? The tech worker, the banker. Literally all walks of life are on the train, and it's the most fascinating thing to just sit there and people watch and to understand. And I think you can even get a pulse on like what's the next trend, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it goes back to, what was it, the tipping point Keds and how it all started in Williamsburg, and then all the cool hip kids were wearing that, and then it became mainstream, right? I
Mm-hmm.
almost see the subway as being that canvas of, okay, what's next, right? Like what am I seeing here? What are some cool things that I'm taking a mental photo of, and getting some inspiration from? Is yeah, New York City again. The subway system is just the best way to get around, and it's also a really fun adventure getting from point A to
Yeah.
point B sometimes. So yeah,
Yeah. It's like a real life mood board. In like you said, in real time you're seeing what's happening day to day, hour to hour, which is it's an insane concept. Was there like a specific moment that triggered you to go from idea to actual action in the process of like that mood boarding back in the 2019 2020 days?
yeah, it's a great question. Um, I've always wanted to start an apparel brand, and that shift happened, I think, when I started making like my first couple hats and head covers. I was kind of dabbling in that and starting to understand the manufacturing process of, okay, I know, like, so for example, the first visors and hats we made were with Imperial. And I think as you start to look at other brands that were in the space, you're like, oh, wait, that's an Imperial hat too. And so you start to
Mm,
understand like those models, and you're like, wait, I could do that, right? Like I can totally do that in the beginning to start to understand and get a feel for it. It's a low touch point, low cost for me to kind of get out there into the world, what I see this brand being.
mm-hmm.
And then it started, fast forward to, 2020 to 2020 to like 2021. We put out some head covers, we put out some towels, the like golf accessories, just to kind of like lightly tell the story of what we're doing. We're a New
Mm-hmm.
York brand. We're for public spaces. We want to celebrate the public athlete. Then, things started picking up, started showcasing more of my photography and highlighting some of these like public spaces in New York City and public courses. Um, and then wanted to dive into, well, actually, I did badge and print, right? I got some blanks and started doing that. And then I was like, wait, some things are slightly off here. Like, I want to be able to figure out how to create something from scratch, right? And go into that
Mm.
process. And my oh my, did I not know the learning curve on that, and so really made the investment in time and some capital to be able to dabble in that, right? And really become truly a sponge in a world that I don't traditionally come from. I'm a designer, but I'm by far not a textile expert. Yeah, I enjoy menswear. I enjoy like clothes. I understand that piece, but like from to different level to science and understanding those things, I had no idea, right? So, um, yeah, yeah. And so as an entrepreneur and someone who loves to learn things, you naturally dive in and you figure it out, right? And that's
That
kind of like what ended up happening.
that was what I think I was most interested in because you've done a lot in 5 years. And like the first three, and you already spoke to it, was like a lot of entry level essentials, just getting like the basic understandings of how to build a brand, how to tell a story, how to bring like product to life and sell it. And then the last two, specifically starting in 2023, was like a robust collection with a campaign and a story and a narrative and a deep lineup of pieces that touched a lot of different spaces. And then also in 2025, like another massive collection with new silhouettes, new material blends and whatnot. Like, what do you think from a learning perspective? Was the first three harder or the last two more difficult in just like process and understanding?
Yeah, I think the first part was harder, just because there was a lot of learning curves from understanding the sampling process to getting fit right to yeah, just understanding the lead times that you would need to even create something like a polo shirt, for example,
Mm-hmm.
or a hat from like scratch. There's a whole process around the details and receiving it back, and then you're taking calls at 11 p.m. at night because you're dealing with companies overseas, and then also there's a language barrier sometimes, right? So there's that piece. But overall, I think the whole part of the organizing the operations piece, was probably the biggest learning curve of it all. just understanding, okay, so once this gets on a ship, it's going to take a month and a half, right? Like to get here.
Mm-hmm.
And then understanding the amount of planning that has to be done ahead of time was one of the biggest things. Um, and also just, I mean, to be honest, I've been really lucky with our factory partners and people that we work with, and I think going back to the brand, right? It's you almost set the bar, and you with the factory, it's like a relationship, right? Where we're bringing in business, they're gonna hopefully get business from us, and we have to sell them on like here's our vision for the apparel that we want to hit, and this is like kind of the ethos and the vibe of what we're trying to hit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we just got lucky with that. And we were able to go through, a couple iterations of for our first collection in spring summer 23, and that was, and I kind of want to talk about a little bit more about that spring summer collection, because I do think that piece or that collection was super special to me, because one, it was my first ever cut and sew collection. Two, we shot it at Van Cortlandt, where I fell back in love with the game, and I really wanted to shoot it in that locker room where there was a lot of history, a lot of connection there for me as an individual, and then also, made a befriended Ben, who me and him, that was like our first project that we worked on together, and we met each other at a randomly, at another course, and we're like, hey, we've been
Mm.
talking for so long. Hey, like I have some ideas. Like I need someone to bounce this off of. I'm in my own head,
Mm.
and so that's where that campaign hit. And um, ultimately, Raymond, the whole thing for me is getting that connection, but also uh, having these great relationships that you start making inside this ecosystem, this community that we're all creating together, right? I think there's like a
Mm-hmm.
new wave of people who are bringing new perspectives into the game, and new perspectives in general, into the space. Um, but yeah, I think that collection, that campaign, just launched us, into like, hey, we're here. We're a brand. We have uh, a story to tell, and here's chapter one, right,
Mm-hmm.
of that story. And then as you go through this, you evolve, and you start learning to, like, say spring summer 25. I think if you look at spring summer 23, you look at spring summer 25. There's so many learnings on that front, from there to now.
Was there a piece in that spring 23 collection that you got back that made you feel a certain way? Like, oh, I think I figured this out. Like there's something here. I think I could do this.
Like a specific silhouette, you're asking?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was the polo, the V1 of that polo. Um, it was, there's a lot of details that went into it. If you've ever seen I mean, anyone who's seen our polo, there's a lot of like minor brand details into that polo that I think it's like a nod to the brand. It's not it's still your traditional looking polo, but it's our own spin on it, right? So the placket has a nice curvature, um, like shape to it, that's shaped to like the P. There are like the side slits on the side have that same rounded edge as our P. Um, and just like little things like that, is what we really honed in on. And it took a couple tries, and then we nailed that silhouette. And I think in anything you put out there, there's always small little things after you put it out because you get feedback. But that
Mm-hmm.
was probably the one that hit really home. I was like, wow, this feels right, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we could really build a business on this, and also the brand on this, right? And I think the polo is, I always like to tell this story around the polo, and this is why I think it hits, and this is why I feel like it's this one of the successful pieces and silhouettes that we've created, is because it literally is for everyone, right? They're like, one of my friends is a course owner. He's like 60-ish years old, right? And he bought the polo because there's a cutaway collar. It reminded him of old English French tailoring of
Mm.
his, like, a really nice put together suit. And he was like, man, I've never seen anything like this. This is something that I want to wear. And so he bought a couple shirts. He put them in his closet. his son who's 16 or 18, and he's like started wearing that shirt, and he's like, hey, that's my shirt, and he's like, well, I like it, you know. And so I think there's like multiple generations that this polo, this classic silhouette speaks to, and that was like an aha moment of like, okay, cool, I think we nailed it, like from a branding standpoint to a silhouette standpoint of communicating that you can literally wear it, right, for anyone. Like if you're older, like that's fine, you can still wear it, right? And I don't know, there's that special connection there that I think that's kind of fun.
Well, that's I think what's super interesting about the brand too is the like brand's execution in apparel and the antithesis of the brand from a public sports standpoint. Like, how are you balancing like traditional menswear and the chaos of public sport, especially East Coast chaos? Like you said, the outdoor basketball hoops, like that's a whole scene, that's a whole vibe. ALD, like has always
Yeah.
existed in that universe too. There's so much culture, rich culture that comes from all those different parts. Tennis, there's night soccer that happens in the city, like, but classic menwear, like you said, also speaks to a completely different version of a person. Like, how are you balancing those two worlds? Is that happening in mood board sessions?
Yeah, that happens definitely in mood board sessions, but it also happens in the material stories I think you're trying to tell. So I'm trying to think of, I think tennis is the probably closest example of like a silhouette piece. I haven't solved the basketball piece or all the, but that, you know, that's like chapter 10 maybe.
Mm.
But like I think the silhouettes of taking, so I think our pants are a perfect example, right?
Mm.
Our pants are taking inspiration from your traditional suit pant that you wear to a wedding, or you know, made out of like wool, or your traditional pieces. And those pants are nice looking, but sometimes they're very uncomfortable because they're kind of stiff, you know, but they look great. Like they look great on everyone when they're on. So I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be able to marry that with, say, a more comfortable fabric, right? That it has a little bit more give a little bit more space up on the waistline, right? And so I think it's like marrying those two things, right? Like how do you take modern materials and materials that are out there, and then marrying that heritage, right,
Mm.
of the those traditional menswear pieces, right? And then again, like how do you tell that story through your imagery, right? Like what are those things that you can do? And I think that's kind of like where um, we try and bridge those gaps. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And there's so much inspiration that comes from the 90s too. And I think especially in golf, because it's a little bit slow or behind, if you will, like our ability to reach back and pull reference points and then modernize it in a way to exactly what you're saying, based off of what we have access to from manufacturing, textiles, material, like all of those different touch points to create, really in a way, like they're unique, but they're also reflect a time and an era that we all like were super passionate about. Is there anything that still surprises you today in the sampling process? I mean, the pant would be really interesting to talk about because that is, you said that took over a year of just like refining and understanding. And for people that are listening, I've talked about this already most recently, but it's one of my favorite pants in the sport and out of the sport. Like I love tech wear, but I still love like nods of classic menswear. So being able to marry the two, you don't find a lot of really good pieces out there that are executed the right way. This
Hmm.
like ranks in the top 3 for me right now. Yeah, anywhere pleated pant.
Hmm. Yeah, I think. Sorry, what was your question again, Raymond? It was around.
Is there
Um,
anything that like surprises you in the sampling process?
oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, definitely. I think the first round of the first sample that we got of the pant, it was literally like just straight down. And so when I tried it on, it did not fit around my waist at all. So it's like how do you communicate that, right? Where um, yeah, that, I mean, it was that, and there were literally like tights on me, right?
Mm.
I was like, this is not it. I was like, this is not what I'm aiming for right here. And then so it's that it's like it's a design process, right? Like you draw it out. Sometimes the blueprint doesn't turn out to be an actual, and then you start to communicate through like literally taking a photo of it and sketching it out. taking
Mm.
measurements, right? And then you start honing in on those details on the pant. And even sending in, like, I sent in one of my, to the factory and did an annotation of a pair of pants that I really, really loved, a dress pants that I really loved. And I was like, hey, this is what I'm talking about. What do you think about this? What are the limitations of, X feature, right, around the waist? What are the limitations here? And so there's all these little details that go into making this pant. And to be honest, I was pretty nervous with a pant. I think pants entering into the bottoms pant game is a high risk, from a business standpoint, because there's so many different body types. There's so many of
Hmm.
those different things, and we kept that in mind with these pants. I think, as you know, when you wear them, there's a lot of room in the front of the pant, and it goes straight down. So hopefully that helps out for people who have more athletic, legs. And so we tried to design it in that way where it hopefully fits everyone. But it's really tough to do that. So then we did that, right, and we got maybe our second or third one felt pretty right, and then you kind of wear test it, you kind of stress test it, you wear it out to the subway, you take it out for a round, you wash it a couple times, and then in the gusset, like on the bottom part of the pant, the sewing was kind of like ripping, and we were like,
Mm.
oh, that's not good. So we figured out new ways of stitching, that whole area. I mean, there's plenty more I could talk about, but
Yeah.
and that's kind of where the pant took it. And then we had fit testers, right? Who, like some of my friends who like golf, but also who love, like, who are pretty critical around pants, who wear pants every day or to work or on the go, and just had them test it, right, and got a lot of good feedback, and then put that feedback into play, and then that's kind of where what you see out in the market now is the version one of the pant. So yeah,
That's what I'm curious of from like a sampling standpoint. Like, what are you chasing? I guess like like how do you know when a garment like that is done? Because
yeah.
perfect doesn't exist. It's always going to be in this like model of refinement, but you can get it to a point where people praise it, love it, can't wait for volume two. But still,
Yeah.
you have to get it to a point where it feels like it's finished enough.
Yeah, I think it's when after you've done all those tests, and really pants is really around the fit, right? I think all the
Mm-hmm.
details were somewhat there, right? They were always there, like from a trim standpoint, meaning like the silicone applique and the zippers and all that stuff was there, but it was more around fit, right? And once the fit was there, I think that's when we could call it a day, right?
Mm-hmm.
um for V1, until we got feedback, and now we're hearing feedback around the pockets, right? And so now the next round, the reorder of these pants, once we're gonna make some small little tweaks to them, right? But yeah, it's mostly around fit for the pants. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's where we're like signed off on it, and especially there's a timeline too, right? Like we're like, okay, well, we
Yep.
gotta we gotta say sign off on this, and then maybe for another day we'll figure out X, this other thing that we know on the pant, um,
Mm-hmm.
to go out and tackle. So you're working against a timeline, but then you're also working against the process, of it all.
Is there, from like a foundation standpoint, you said that you reference existing silhouettes that it has like that you've fallen in love with or whatnot? How much does like memory also play in the role of when you're creating garments or mood boarding sessions? Because again, when I was going back to the top, doom
Mhm.
scrolling just on like your personal feed, like you were a lot of food, a lot of tennis, a lot of sport just in general, a lot of people. Like how much are you pulling from just memory and experiences in design?
Yeah, man, Raymond, that's a great question. I feel like it's a subconscious thing, I think, as a kid of the 90s, you gain inspiration, and especially watching Tiger, right? I think that was kind of in my mind, the pants that he wore, but maybe not so like wide and baggy, but like more of a, a honed in version of that, and our version of that. I think that pulled in. I think a lot of like my like skateboarding background. When I was a kid, like, or a teenager, you'd wear more comfortable wide leg pants, that came over, your shoes, and they would get all ripped up on the bottom, on the back side,
Yep.
that type of stuff. And yeah, I think those are, I think they do come up like in some of the design process. And I think it's also like the evolution of myself as a person. I
Mm,
think uh, starting to care a little bit more about quality over quantity, and trying to really hone in on what that is for us, for me, myself, and the brand, and not being wasteful in a predominant, like fashion is a wasteful uh, industry, right? So like just trying to understand the process and how we can be responsible in a non-sustainable industry, and like how do we be responsible in that, and creating like good garments that people can wear through the test of time, right? Like for example,
mm,
um, before fast fashion was a thing, you would look through, or I would look through my dad's closet, and he would have a nice blazer or a bomber jacket, that he used to wear when my dad was an engineer at NASA, right? So he had a jacket, and it's still, I have it now, and I want like public drip pieces to be somewhat of that, right? Where
mm,
you can have that, and it's not going to be in this like cycle of fashion, right? Um, and that's where I think classics to me never die, right? And that's kind of like where some of our DNA is in now, is to be able to create silhouettes that are timeless, that can, go through trends, and kind of survive through the test of time. Um, and we really want people to not just buy one season and then kind of like forget about it. We want people to um, buy the pants and then have them combo it with the next season and the fall season, and that goes back to the like sustainable part. We don't want our customers to be like, okay, we're done with the polo now, but we want them to build, right? We want them to build their
mm,
wardrobe. We want them to build their wardrobe on a foundation of like hopefully that we can create for them,
mm.
to be able to build, and hopefully they connect with it in that way.
That makes a lot of sense because I think from spring summer 23 to the most latest collection in 25, like there's still a lot of wearable pieces between the two collections. From like a responsibility design thought process, do you think like that is your like anchor filter? Like we talked about, you haven't necessarily figured out how you connect basketball, like basketball references into the brand. Is that just like, would you say that's a part of like the responsibility of design? Like you're not just pushing for things just because, whereas like you want to be more of a slow player to the game just to make sure that things are getting done the right way.
Yeah, I think that's definitely right, right? I think we don't want to just put stuff out there to put stuff out there. We want it to be thoughtfully done. And I think in the beginning, that's something that I learned. I put out a lot of things, for myself around the accessories side, and I was like, okay, we need X amount. But I think for this, right, we want to be able to feel good about it. We want to be thoughtful. We want to be strategic around it. Um, and yeah, I think the pants are a perfect example. Like we were like, okay, we could possibly put this out, next season. But then I was like, I don't think it's ready yet. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think if we put it out there might be a bunch of returns. People might not connect with it, And I think you just, I think there's discipline, I guess, is what I'm saying, around understanding when to go out into these different markets. So, for example, basketball, I'm definitely not ready for that. I think for tennis, yes, right, because I think there's a common DNA between the sports, and then also I used to play tennis for fun, and playing with some friends who are really good. And I think there's a lot of silhouettes. For example, the blade polo, right? I think
Yep.
that is a direct connection with golf. It can go both ways, right? Shirts, I think could easily go both ways too. And then to the sustainable part and strategic thinking is how can we think about um, using the same color for multiple um, silhouettes, right? We become more efficient on the way that we're producing things. Therefore, we're not dying as much, and being as wasteful, right? And we're trying to be conscious of that as we start scaling, and to be able to be responsible with our factory partners to better understand um, what are the best practices, the least wasteful, and what do we get most for our yield of water that we're using, say,
Mm-hmm.
to dye something, right? Because that is the most, what I've learned is that is the most wasteful part of the process, is the water and the dipping and the dyeing piece. And there's just so much there to be learned, and how do we be responsible as a business, and as also someone who's putting product out into the world.
Mm-hmm. And then I think from like just a cut standpoint too, because I've always existed in sport. I played college football. I played sports all through high school growing up, even when I was a kid and stuff. And like, I think that is like one of the main contributors as to why I like refined tech wear, but still
Mm-hmm.
like really appreciate classic menswear too. Um, in terms of like the way you cut things, are you looking at that from a technicality standpoint or more of just like how it emotionally makes you feel when you put something like that on?
I think both, right? I think there's that emotion part. Like I always think of Apple. You're like
Mm,
when you receive something from Apple, you're like there's like a special feeling, right? Like how do we create that too, right? From the packaging. So our packaging is 100% compostable, right? So there's some of that DNA of what we're talking about. Um, and yeah, we want you to, and then when you put it on, you're like, oh, I feel comfortable in this, right? Like this is something I can wear and feel comfortable in myself around it, right?
mm,
And that's how I felt about the pants. Right? Like when I put them on, I was like, wow, I feel comfortable. I literally wear them all the time now. And my wife is like, do you wear jeans anymore? I was like, no, I don't. I was like, I don't really wear jeans anymore because I feel like these pants just are so dialed for myself, and I love wearing them. They're super comfy.
mm-hmm,
So I want people to feel comfortable, right? But also look sharp at the same time. And I think that's where, sometimes in menswear, things are tailored and fitted, and you might not feel like you can move, you know, uh, in certain ways because it's a little bit more tighter, it's a little bit more tailored. So how do you have that healthy in between, and choose the right fabrics to be able to feel comfortable in what you're wearing?
mm-hmm. And when you have finished pieces like that, like, do you think it's more about what it is from a garment standpoint or what it allows someone to do with that garment?
I think it's how do you how does the person, um yeah, take that garment and fit into their lifestyle, right? Like how do they wear it to church, or do they wear it to dinner? Um, do they? Yeah, I think it's really around that. Like how do they feel around it, right? Like how do they
Mm-hmm.
integrate it into their life, not just in golf, right? And that was one thing that I was pretty excited about on the our tonal polos. Like a lot of people are like, "Hey, this is like the best pole." I don't even golf in it. I wear it to the office, right?
Mm,
And I'm like, I don't know, like there's like this thing about golf shirts and going to the office, and there's that whole thing. And then, but I do think our polos could be worn like the ones that are more like basics and solids, like a full all black polo where there's not crazy branding or your club logo. It's a little
mm-hmm.
bit more discreet. And with the Wall Street Journal, they were writing about how this is literally a polo. Or I was talking about it where it's something where you could put on your half zip or your regular crew neck polo, and then you still see like a really nice collar, right? But you would
Mm-hmm.
never ever know it was a golf polo, right? So how do we figure out that marrying between uh, like on the course and beyond, right? Like what is that story that we're trying to tell, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
my ideal would be is that someone goes to go play pickleball, right, in public drip. They come out of it with public drip, maybe like a public drip sweatsuit, and then they're going
Yep.
out. Yeah, and that's kind of like what we want to try and do is integrate into our audience's lifestyle, right, in those
Mm-hmm.
public spaces.
Well, and something I don't think we've talked about at all yet, but the content the last 2 years too. It I think is very
Mm,
reflective. It like visually articulates the narrative that you're trying to paint. Like a lot of and I've talked to Ben about this at nauseum, but I think in golf we haven't necessarily talked about the in between moments, like what's happening before you play around and what's the story and the narratives that are happening after a round, because those
yeah.
are where a lot of memories come from. Because again, when I think about playing in college football, I very ever reference like the actual games, like it was the bus rides, the chaos that happened like in the
Yeah.
hotel and stuff. Like those are all like
Yeah.
the core memories. And I think especially with that spring 23 content piece that you put out, I told you this 100 times, but it felt like nostalgia, like MTV mornings, those music videos. Like it just had so much recall to it. Like how important is the way the brand visually shows up to help try to communicate like the vision that you have for the brand?
Yeah, yeah, the visuals are uber important. Like they're very important to me, and then me and our media partners, our production partners, the Partum Co. We have seen eye to eye on literally everything, right? And they get what I'm trying to do, and it's really showing. Uh, it's like golf adjacent, it's golf, but it isn't.
Yep.
And I think it's like, how do you show that? And of course, with some of that MTV flair, like I mean, I came from that era of music videos and loving watching those. In fact, like when I was studying, I thought that's what I wanted to be, was a music video,
Mm.
director and like doing all these types of things. So it's kind of a cool full circle moment to be able to take an apparel brand and kind of translate some of that with our production partners to get that going. But yeah, like for example, the spring summer 23 video was partnered with some vintage, gear, right? Vintage clothing. And I don't want people to wear all public drip. Obviously, if you
Yep.
want to, that's awesome. But I want people to pair it and to marry it with their current wardrobe. I want them to feel like they can wear, I don't know, like a wool pair of pants if they wanted to with our polo if they see fit, or,
Mm-hmm.
a vest or the cardigan, with their regular polo that they wear, or just a t-shirt, right? I want to give like elements and add to people's wardrobes, and not dominate their wardrobe, but also to be able to hopefully complement it
Mm-hmm.
for them. And I think that's what that campaign showed was, hey, look, it's public drip, but this is really what it is. It's about expressing yourself in whatever you feel comfortable in. Um, and yeah,
That's where I feel like I talked about this a couple of times, but just having like visual reference points for people that are getting into personal style, like lookbooks play such an important role in being able to visually communicate ways to do it. And again, to your point, it not being a uniform, but it's like how can we coexist in a closet that you already have? This is something else I've talked about is just don't start
mhm,
from scratch. Understand what you currently have, especially from a responsibility standpoint, and then
yeah,
start to bring in anchor pieces to help put together a thoughtful outfit that also lasts for a really long time, that isn't so trend specific. Um, but yeah, like I guess as a part of that, working with Paradigm or Pardum, like how in the weeds are you in terms of like the process just to make sure it gets executed the way you want?
yeah. So we create a mood board together. We go through the whole pre-production process where we throw spaghetti at the wall essentially, right? We put like gather inspiration from everywhere, right? Past music videos to current lookbooks that are out there on the market that we really love. We set the tone there, and then uh, I kind of say like, hey, this is what we really want to feature. We really want to like maybe take it to a different level and all this from our other videos. And here's kind of the tone. And then we come up with a storyboard together for that, right? And then with that storyboard, we walk through it and then we kind of tweak it here and there and the shots that we want to get. And then we actually go out and look out for locations, right? So we go and look for these locations that fit that vibe of what we're trying to do.
Mm.
So we're pretty involved together on that pre-production phase, and then we go out and we go and shoot. And if there's things that in any type of shoot, there's always like things that new ideas come up, and we go out and shoot it. And so yeah, we're pretty closely involved. I'm pretty hands on with them and how we do it, but also like kind of hands off when I need to be because they are
Mm.
like uber talented on multiple levels, from an editing standpoint, as you've seen in some of the
Yeah,
videos,
yeah.
to like vision and like translating what I'm putting out there and then them translating it to the finished product.
Do you think with that, like you have a responsibility to shape culture, or do you feel like you're kind of like prioritizing like reflecting like either the city or whatnot? Because it's again, it's just a cultural like melting pot out where you stay.
hmm
Do you feel like there's more of a responsibility to shape it or reflect it?
I think to not really shape it, but to reflect it, because I mean, I think what we're seeing and what you see in New York City has been here for a while, and it's
Mm-hmm.
my own interpretation of it, you know, and everyone has different lives and different things going on in their life. And but it is like, for me, it's to highlight New York City and how maybe to some people it's really grungy and like, why is there trash everywhere and all these types of things. But there's a like a beauty to the chaos here, um, that I want to kind of show. And I think you kind of see that through some of the city scenes that we have in some of our videos, and really highlighting that that piece of New York City. But yeah, just to really highlight, you know, the city, I think is a huge thing for me. Um, Whether that be, you know, highlighting some of the like the street scenes, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the normalcy of people going on the subway, coming off the subway. Even in one of our campaigns of how you're literally carrying your clubs to the subway and then you're going to get off for your tea time, right? That is a very real experience here in New York City for people who don't have a car, right? That is
Mm-hmm.
your mode of transportation, and golfing in New York City is just so different than everywhere else. It's literally a grind, and it's almost like a reflection of New York City, where if you can grind it out here, you can literally grind it out anywhere else, and it's just not as hard. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what is it? I think me and Ben were talking about it. It was like a New York handicap 5 is really a one handicap somewhere else because of all the
That makes
hardships that you,
sense.
because like you don't really practice here, because there's
Yeah.
no real practice facilities. Your practice facility is like the first 2 or 3 holes of your play, you know.
That's
Yeah,
hilarious. It's a
yeah,
grind.
yeah. It is
Um,
literally a grind.
to that point, like, how are you protecting, I guess, like your taste? Just because there's so much chaos around you in terms of both like online, whether it's what other brands are doing, what other brands outside our golf are doing, the
Yeah.
feedback that you're getting, and just like the influence of the city. Like, how are you protecting your vision, I guess?
Yeah. So in the beginning of uh, coming up with the name Public Drip, and I'm always a believer in like, what's my anchor point, right? Like, where am I always going to go back to? And how, if I stray off to the, you know, to one end, like, how do I always go back to this like manifesto, right? And I go back to our mission and vision and our manifesto of, you know, this is for the public athlete. This is for people to self-express what they're doing, and then also to, yeah, build that community, right? And to be able to tell those stories and uplift those stories. And that's hopefully the grounding point for me, you know, to like, that's what it's been, you know, is that compass. And I've always believed that good brands always come back to that, like, what's their overall ethos, you know. And obviously it changes, it can shift, right? It shifts, there's different renditions based on what the market's telling you, but also like, what is that evolution of that vision and mission, right? It can constantly change because it is an extension of myself, right? um, and I think, to your point around all the noise, you know, there's always going to be noise everywhere. I think it's just coming back to those core values of what you want to do, and staying focused, and taking it with a grain of salt, but also respecting. I think also too, it's really hard when you're in the trenches to take a step back and smell the roses and see what you've done,
Mm-hmm.
and to really appreciate it. And I always have to constantly remind myself to do that, because I think it's the entrepreneurial grind is kind of lonely, and it's also very it's also just a grind, you know. I think there's a lot of things that you don't see under the hood, but you always see the output, right? And I guess also for me, I'm not one to go on social media and vlog about, you know, like, oh man, I'm up till 1 a.m. designing this little
Yeah.
detail here. Here's why you should buy it. Maybe I should, I don't know. But that's just not who I am as a person. I rather like to let the work speak for itself, and
Mm-hmm.
what we put out there. And yeah, I think to to stay grounded in why I'm doing this, and coming back to that is always important for me to kind of drown out some of that noise that's out there,
Mm-hmm. For,
and to believe what I'm doing, right? Um,
mm-hmm. From a compass standpoint, like, how do you know when to push for more? and expand like outside of things that works. Like the anywhere pleated is something that's brand new, but like the mock necks, the blade polos, those are all refinements. They're products that I love. You've
Mhm.
introduced new colorways that I love, and then out comes along a anywhere pleated plan. I'm like, this guy, the one man band who has a full time job and a family living in a chaotic city, is just like presenting some of the craziest product in golf right now.
Yeah, I think it's yeah. I don't know, man. I think it's just uh, building things for and as an extension of myself and stuff that I believe in and stuff that I would wear every day, and hopefully other people enjoy it. Right? I think it's as simple as that. Um, and hopefully people see that those details when they receive our garments. Right? To be able to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's what I
yeah.
wanted to ask too. Like, is there anything that you hope people catch now, like that care about or notice in like the details, the storytelling? And then is there anything that you hope that people are like paying attention to in the future as well?
Yeah, I think how everything can fit together from season to season. How I want people to build on like almost use our releases as building blocks to hopefully equip them with a versatile like wardrobe, right? Um, I the details in the materials, I would say, like the materials, the I mean, we have a knit collar on the blade collar too. On the blade, there's a knit collar, which I think is different. And it's not a self fabric collar like a lot of ones out in the market. It's a little higher, right? Um, I think just those little details, and then also as you wash it, I've washed my. I mean, depending on how you wash it and how you take care of your clothes, but I wash mine, and the collar takes shape and it stays shape uh, for a long time. And I hate collars that after you wear them, they get all bacony.
Yep.
That's like something we wanted to test on all of our garments that we're putting out there is how does it survive life and the things that it throws at it, right?
Yep.
And I think it's just and one thing I want to speak to too is there's a lot of testing and feedback that goes involved in all the things that we do, and it's all by design and it's all purposeful, and we want to keep on evolving that, right? Like the purpose, right? And, I think, for example, the swing shirt, right? We
Yes.
want you to always have that in your bag. That's like a garment that you should always have in your bag and always want to wear when maybe it's a little, chilly, or maybe the wind picks up a little bit and you're like, hey, I need an extra layer. Okay, cool, it's here, right? And it packs into its own pocket, right? So we want to get more
Mm-hmm.
into like innovative design, right? With integrating into your lifestyle, right? Whether that be
Mm-hmm.
golf, whether that be tennis, whether that be, going out to dinner after, playing your fun sport that you want to do. Like, what are those stories that we want to tell, right? And right now it's in golf. Um, and one thing I think you've probably noticed is it's public drip. It's not public drip golf. It's
Mm-hmm.
literally the public spaces. Like we get inspired by these spaces in the lens of like menswear and also sportswear. And it's hard not to say even streetwear, right? Because we're in New York City and I have a skateboarding background. There's a lot of like some of those influences there that we can.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the brand is positioned in a really nice way where we can do those menswear pieces, but we can also, steer and have some streetwear characteristics into some of our silhouettes, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
off-centered embroidery to screen printing on a not traditional area or placement on, and then also graphics too, right? So I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of cool things we can do that I'm pretty excited about for the future.
Speaking of golf too, like I've been really weird about that over the last couple of years, but that just not having that in the name, I think opens up the aperture enough, going back to like inspiration, that allows like your personal taste and intention to pick and choose from the influences of your life, which I think not a lot of brands can do just because of having golf keeps it so secured and excluded. And then on the wash
Hmm.
note, I have like a guide that I've been putting together because I know for a fact, especially with a lot of men, like they just have no idea how to like wash and dry their own clothes. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, no way you should put a polyester or like your golf shirt in a dryer. That thing is gonna get ripped up
They're
and
not paying
maybe
any attention.
yeah, and then yes, hang dry your stuff, man. Dryers are a thing of the West to make sure that things get dried really quick, but I feel like in all the other countries that I like, they'll literally lay it on the grass in the sun and then it's done, you know.
It's
Um,
hilarious.
yeah, yeah.
Cool. The closing question that I had that I asked everybody kind of on the way out, you could take a second to think about it, but it's what's the story behind the one item in your closet you'll never get rid of? And what does it mean to you?
Ooh.
Could be
I'm
golf,
gonna
could be golf
say,
adjacent.
I'm gonna have to say that my dad's bomber jacket that he
Mm.
gave me because he's worked on some pretty cool projects with that jacket, or you know, like the Galileo probe and like stuff like that. You know, stuff that's like it's insane. But it goes back to hopefully I can give that to my daughters, right? Like they can wear that later on down the road, right? And I think it goes back
Mhm.
down to how can you pass on these mementos, or like, hey, that was grandpa's jacket. How do I and I think that piece is really, really cool because it's
Mhm.
vintage. It's from I think the 80s, and it's still on trend. And I think it makes I don't know. It's my dad's jacket. That's why that's the one piece, and I love it because it is the OG bomber jacket silhouette, the
Love
true
that.
OG bomber jacket.
Yeah, I've gotten a couple of especially in garments, like a lot of just like passed down pieces, which is really cool. That's why I have a couple of like my grandpa's hats and some
Yeah.
old wool knit polos and stuff, which is cool.
Oh yeah, the wool
Um,
knit polos, or yeah, or even yeah, just any type of jacket, especially like the blazer jackets, because you know they're just not some are just not built the same anymore. So
well, and there's a
um,
lot of brands that don't exist anymore too, which is kind of nice to
yeah,
have like on hand.
yeah,
Well, cool, man. This has been an insane conversation. We're gonna do way more of these, but super pumped to be able to ask a lot of questions that I've like had in my back pocket for a minute now. I guess like on the way out, is there anything else that you want to speak about? Let anybody know that's coming. Where can people find you? All the good stuff.
yeah. I mean, coming in, well, I think when this airs, there'll be professional players wearing our gear that we've designed, which is a big moment for the brand. Never ever did I imagine, you know, the public athlete, you know, the the ethos of what we're designing for professional players connecting with it and thinking it's stylish enough for them to wear it and feel comfortable in it. So super excited about that. And then excited for the next year or two. You know, I think we are growing. We are in multiple international markets, you know, where we're in a lot of the Asian countries now. So I think excited for growth and to keep on learning and to keep on building with the community here. And just always being a sponge and learning a lot from the business
Mhm.
side, but also from the like creative side and all that. But a lot on the business side, I would say I'm pretty excited about. I think I think there's brand and then there's business, and then it's like how do you marry those two together to help prop up the brand, but also keep on creating and on the brand side, because I think you have to have the business side to be able to keep on pushing the brand forward. So I'm
Mhm.
super excited about all the prospects in the near future here.
Constantly learning. It's never gonna stop.
No, it isn't, man. And also I appreciate you tapping our shoulders to be on this. It's an honor, and always been a fan of golf projects, and yeah, it's cool to be on the pod.
No, this is part one. We'll do a part two probably in a couple of weeks just to catch back up again for sure.
Yeah, I would love that, man.
Awesome.
Cool.
Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Raymond.
All right, that's a wrap for today's episode. If you're feeling the vibe, hit that subscribe button and drop us a quick review. It helps us keep the conversation going and growing. For more golf fashion, follow us over at Skratch and Golf Projects. We're always serving up style and stories that make this game what it is. And if you're hungry for even more, head over to Skratch.golf, where our collective stories live. Until next time, dress well and play fast. Peace.